Thank you, TELAIT. Good evening. My name is Noam. I'm the community shlicha here in Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome and thank you for joining our Yom Hazikaron virtual memorial service. We will start with a special message from Eric Stillman, Executive Director of the Jewish Federation and Foundation of Nashville and Middle Tennessee. Eric.
Thank you, Noam. I'm honored to deliver greetings this evening on behalf of the Jewish Federation and Jewish Foundation of Nashville and Middle Tennessee. Tonight, we commemorate Yom Hazikaron, which is a very important and moving remembrance for not only the people involved in this program, it is also for many in our community of great significance. Tonight, we are very fortunate to have with us some very special people. And without further ado, I look forward to a very meaningful program. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric, for the special message. Yom HaZikaron is a sensitive day to me. My job in the Army was a social worker for soldiers who got injured or ill during their service in the Army, as well as visiting families who lost their loved one. A message that I took with me from my IDA service is that every soldier is a whole world. They had hobbies and funny stories. They have pictures from hiking, school trips, and family events. You can see clearly how much they were loved by their family and friends, by their stories. And now I'm very grateful to hear the story of Lieutenant Nir Shreibman, Zichrono Livracha, told by his father Amnon and his sister Tal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Noam, and hello everybody that's watching us tonight. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Tal, and I've been living in Nashville for the past year and 4 months. And this is my father, Amnon. But Nashville has always been a second home for me. 35 years ago, my father started working here as a real estate developer. And so our whole family are dual citizenship. While growing up in Israel, we also had a home here in Laverne, Tennessee, which was a home for Nir as well. And tonight we're gonna tell a little bit about our family and about Nir.
I met my wife, Ruti. This was in 1973. And a few weeks after we met in a boarding school called Kfar Galim next to Haifa, Israel got involved in a very terrible war. It was called Yom Kippur War. When I came back from the war, I decided to get married with Ruti. This was in the summer of '74. And we continued to live in Kfar Galim. We lived there 6 years. Nir was born in June '76. And 2 hours after he was born, I got the message that I was promoted to be the general manager of the boarding school. This was a very nice event that in one day I got my first son, and also I got my position at a very early age. After living a few years in Israel, we were both in the education field, me and my wife. We decided to move to the US. We moved to Dallas, Texas. This was in December of '81, with the intention that I will do there a fast master's degree. But I ended up staying there 6 years, and I did also my PhD in Dallas, Texas. Obviously, I took with me my wife and my 2 boys at that time. Also, the younger brother of Nir Sagi was born. When we moved, Nir was about 6 years of age.
He started going to the Jewish preschool there, Solomon Schechtel. He didn't know much English. He knew no and yes. Mostly he used no at first before he from all its ways, and then put it behind his back, do a couple of moves, and give it to whoever's cube it is with a solution. It was perfect, and everybody gathered around and to see the 6-year-old that knew how to do a Rubik's Cube behind his back. It was such an attraction that all of his classmates and all of the teachers and all of their parents were amazed. And the principal of that school actually made Nir only do 2 cubes a day because it started interrupting with the school's day. Nir also, in that time in Dallas, got familiar with the American culture, mostly sports. He loved bowling and baseball and football and basketball. He had all his favorite teams, and that's something that he took with him also when we went back to Israel. I see we were having a little bit trouble with the connection, so I'll go back to the Rubik's story because I've been told that we were cut off there. I was saying that Nir knew how to do a Rubik's Cube by just kind of looking at it, knowing exactly how to make it work, and he put it behind his back, which was very impressive for a 6-year-old to do. It was so impressive that all of his classmates and teachers and parents of his classmates were amazed by the 6-year-old. And so it kind of gained him a lot of fame, and everybody wanted to be his friend, the 6-year-old that knew how to do a Rubik's Cube behind his back. Nir got familiar with the culture, the American culture, mostly sports, which he loved watching and also playing. Baseball, basketball, football, bowling, got familiar with the music, the groove, the style. And it's something that went with Nir for all of his life. I was born in Dallas when Nir was 10, and the day I was born, he was so excited. He just learned at school that if you were born in the US, you can become the American president. And so as my mom went into labor, he screamed, it's a girl, and she can become the president of the United States.
Okay, so we lived in Dallas total of 6 years, but in 1985, I started to fly to Tennessee. My employer positioned me here. And for about a year and a half, the family lived in Dallas, and I was staying most of the week in Tennessee until we reached the conclusion that it's about time to return to Israel. And I will do the commute from Israel to Tennessee instead of flying every week from Dallas to Tennessee. So the family was living in Israel, and we had a kind of a norm in the family that every summer when school was off, everybody will join me here in Laverne, Tennessee. Like Tal said, we maintained 2 houses, one in Israel and one here. And when I say maintain, it means everything. It means that we had 2 sets of clothes, 2 sets of furniture, 2 sets of cars and everything. And for the kids, it was very usual to know that when the school is off, they are flying and staying here in Tennessee for 2 months. They loved it. Nir found here many friends. So he had also 2 sets of friends, one in Israel, one in Tennessee. And one day he learned that he can be a pilot. So he started to take flying lessons in the airport of Smyrna. And at the age of 16, he was already qualified to fly solo 5 different airplanes. And we had a joke in the family that when they are in Tennessee, he can fly an airplane, but in Israel, he is not eligible to drive a car yet until the age of 18.
So Nir, as my father said, he was very easygoing. He got along with everybody. I mean, you could just be in a room for 2 minutes with him and you fell in love. He had a charisma, he had this energy. He was always with a smile on his face. And so it didn't really matter, you know, if he just came and he had to meet a whole new set of friends here. He knew he would have friends for the summer. Also in Israel, you know, he went to middle school and then high school. School wasn't really his top priority. He mostly liked being around friends, playing sports. He even tried to build an Israeli baseball team in Kfar Saba, which is the city where we lived in. It did not work out. There's not a baseball league in Israel that's any good or even exists. He mostly liked being with friends, trying to hit on girls, playing sports, and of course, our trips together as a family. One of the most amazing things about him, I think, is that it was his senior year and he was supposed to graduate from the Israeli high school and then go to his mandatory service in the IDF. As you all know, boys and girls, when they finish their high school and they reach the age of 18, need to go and serve their country. Girls for 2 years at least, and boys for 3 at least. And he had his finals at around June, but then he was supposed to be drafted at the end of July. And he looked at the calendar and he's like, well, that doesn't leave me much time to go with the family to the US to our yearly trip. And so I would just skip my prom, which is a big deal for a senior, of course, being with his friends at this big party and the graduation and everything. And he said, no, I mean, graduation and party is great, but being with my family before I joined the IDF is more important. And so we went on our yearly trip together the day he finished his last final. And in that trip, we went to Canada, we saw Niagara Falls, we did like this whole scenery thing. And then we also went to West Memphis to a horse race, just for fun, not really gambling. And then Sagi and Nir just, you know, love doing the statistics of things, trying to see which horse has the best shots of winning and trying to, you know, make it fun and competitive. And then Nir looked at me and he's like, well, sister, I was about 7. He's like, which horse do you think is gonna win? And I was looking at the horses, you know, I had no clue. And I'm like, well, the one with the pink socks. And of course it was the underdog, like no chance he would win. But I was convinced that, you know, we had to bet on the horse with the pink socks. And Nir, being the brother he was, trying to, you know, listen to his little sister and make me feel like my word mattered. Betted some of his money on the horse with the pink socks. And what do you know? He won. Nir was so proud. He went and he said, you know, you always have to listen to my little sister, which he didn't, of course, all the time, but it was fun to kind of, you know, have that brotherly feeling.
Okay, so like my daughter Tal said, in Israel at the age of 18, when you finish high school, you're supposed to go to the military. In our family, everybody served. My wife, myself, and my 3 kids, including Tal, everybody served. And Nir initially wanted to go into pilot training, but it didn't work out. So after a short while, they moved him into the artillery corps. And for a period of about 2 years, Nir was all the time in training. Started in the pilot training, then he went into the basic training of artillery, and then advanced training, and then officer training, and this and that. And after 2 years, Nir got a rank of a 2nd lieutenant, and he was ready to serve and give back what the military invested in him as far as training and training and training. Now, you want to tell the story about positioning in Lebanon?
I just want to say that we have a bunch of stories from his friends about that time of the service. I mean, he looked at it kind of as a summer camp. I mean, he took it seriously, of course, and he was also doing very serious work. But when he could kind of have fun and take a camera out in the middle of training and take a selfie or get the guitar and like sing when you were supposed to sleep because, you know, tomorrow is another day of hard work or a course or something, he would just have fun. And even if he got punished and he didn't go out for the weekend for home because, I don't know, they laughed too hard or they found the toaster that he put in their room, which they were not supposed to have any appliances, he wasn't bummed about it. I mean, he was just kind of, his motto is to have fun as much as you can. I mean, don't take life too seriously. Do what you're supposed to do. I mean, be a good soldier. He went to be an officer. He wanted to serve his country the best he could, but he did it with a smile. Before we go, I think we need to kind of explain what Lebanon is to whoever doesn't know.
Yeah, so I will give you a little short introduction about the war in Lebanon, because Nir died after serving 7 months in the war in Lebanon. As a matter of fact, all his service as an officer was in the war in Lebanon. In order to understand it, we need to go back about 50 years to the year 1970. And in that year, a chaos started in another neighboring country to Israel that is called Jordan, when Yasser Arafat was trying to kick out the king of Jordan, King Hussein, and he failed. And this caused an assassination of 15,000 Palestinians in one night. We call it the Black September. As a result of it, those Palestinians started gradually to leave Jordan and moved into southern Lebanon. Lebanon was the only country in the Middle East that the leaders of the country were Christians. And the first few years were kind of quiet, but gradually the people that came from Jordan, most of them were terrorists belonging to the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. They started to cause chaos there. And in 1975, it officially became a war between Christians and Muslims in Lebanon. The war lasted several years. The total amount of casualties in this war between Muslims and Christians was about 150,000 people. You can compare it to what's going on these days in Syria. They also have a civil war in Syria between different kind of parties. The world did not like the situation, and a group of Western countries decided to send to Lebanon a peacekeeping soldiers group led by the US. And this happened around 1980. And they stayed there about 3 years. But in 1983, there was a big explosion in the camp of the Marines in Lebanon. More than 300 people got killed. Out of them, 250 people were Americans. And President Reagan pulled out the American troops from Lebanon because he could not take the pressure that came from the US. In the meantime, Israel got involved in the war in 1982, about 1 year before the US pulled out. The reason that Israel got involved in the war in Lebanon is that the fighting between the Muslims and the Christians, that really was not our problem, started to leak into Israel. And every once in a while, there was a terrorist attack in Israel that happened again and again until somebody in Israel made a decision that we need to go into Lebanon and try to cool down the situation. So the fight, if there is a fight, is going to be on their grounds and not on our ground. And you can see in this map that is now presented to you, an area in gray that we call the buffer zone. The idea was to create a buffer zone between Lebanon and Israel, and the buffer zone is going to be occupied by Israeli soldiers, as well as an additional army that we created there, the Army of the Christians, to protect the border between Israel and Lebanon. To my regret, the US pulled out in 83, or actually in 84, but Israel got stuck there for 18 years and we only pulled out in the year 2000. And the whole war in Lebanon cost Israel about 2,000 casualties. So this is the background of Lebanon. And Nir went to serve in this war because the army wanted him to be there. And believe it or not, this was also for Nir the best way to pay back what was invested in him.
Yeah, Nir thought that serving in Lebanon would be the most interesting and the most exciting and the most meaningful thing he can do to serve his country. When he finished his training and they got their,
The positioning.
Sorry, they got their positioning. He know that his course had only 2 openings to serve in Lebanon. And then our last name is Shreibman, and so we're kind of last. Sheen is one of the last alphabet letters in Hebrew. And so we saw his friends going inside and getting their positioning, and the 2 positions that were open for, I know it's funny, it sounds open for Lebanon, but officers kind of needs to get their specialty, and then there's an opening. So the 2 jobs that were in Lebanon were occupied by the best soldiers of that time of his course. And then Nir started being bummed. He was like, well, I hope I'm not gonna get stuck doing, something lame. I really need to do something meaningful. And then his name came up and he went to his officer that looked at him and he's like, well, Nir, you really wanted to serve in Lebanon. I know you wanted the action. And Nir was like, yeah, but I know you already gave those parts. And then his officer told him, well, that's right, but there was another opening and I saved it just for you. Nir could just get whatever he wanted. That was another thing about him. He had this charm that with that like smile and attitude and just, falling in love with him, he would get whatever he wanted. And so after he got the positioning, he called my mom and he's like, well, Mom, you're not gonna sleep at nights anymore, but I'm super excited. I'm gonna serve my country and I'm gonna serve in Lebanon.
So Nir served in Lebanon all his 7 months as an officer. Most of the time he served in a stronghold that is called Bufor. Bufor is a place that was built in the year 2000, about 1,000 years ago, by the Crusaders. And it was a very, very strong structure. And Israel occupied it. It was in the middle of the area that Israel wanted to create a buffer between us and the Lebanese. Like I said, the war lasted 18 years, and the war changed its face several times during these years. Initially, it was a war between Israel and the PLO that was led by Yasser Arafat, but we kicked him out from Lebanon to Tunisia after about a year. And the war gradually started to be a war between Israel and the Hezbollah group. The Hezbollah group is led by Iran, and as a matter of fact, they are still there as we speak now. And the weapons changed, the targets changed. Nir's position was to be frontline officer. His job was to give targets for the artillery where they need to shoot in case of any confrontation.
I just want to say a little bit about Nir in that time. When he came home, he wouldn't give us any feeling that he's doing something super dangerous, at least not in my end. I was 10 years old and I just remember him coming. He wouldn't hug us. He wouldn't want us near him. He would go take a shower. He would take Lebanon off his body. He would eat like he haven't eaten in a month. And then he would, just have fun with us. He would take us bowling. He would meet with friends. We knew he was doing something dangerous. We knew, he's doing something meaningful, but he never gave us the feeling that something is going to happen to him. We knew he was going to be all right because it's Nir. And also, it was just amazing to me, the fact that, this big officer came home for, 48 hours, 3 days, and he had time also for his little sister, which was just amazing for me.
So here we are in the year 1997. We are 15 years into the war. And at that time, in order to save lives, the Israeli military decided that the soldiers will not move in and out into Lebanon on the ground because of the fact that there were too many incidents that soldiers were killed. And the idea was to start to fly them with helicopters. Actually, it was the second time, and only the second time that it happened, there was not a third time later, that Israel was trying to fly in and out soldiers with helicopters. And the helicopter disaster happened on Tuesday, February the 4th. Two American-made helicopters called Sikorsky were in the air. The total personnel was 73 military soldiers. About 8 of them were the crew, and the rest of them were fighters. And because of one reason or another, 1 minute before they crossed the border into Lebanon, they crashed in the air, and nobody survived the crash, and all the 73 soldiers were killed, and Nir was one of them.
So it was a Tuesday. Nir was home for a vacation for the past week, and from Sunday, he was supposed to go back to Lebanon. Because it was such bad weather, it was a very cold and rainy February month. His flight got delayed, and so he came back Sunday evening, and then he came back Monday evening. Then Tuesday morning, he left back north from Kfar Saba. It's about a 3-hour drive. And so he did that back and forth for 2 days just to be with his family. He said he preferred, eating home and being in his own bed as long as he can. So Tuesday, he made his way back north. He stopped at a convenience store to buy some snacks and coffee for his friends in Beaufort, and where he served in Lebanon. And then at about a minute to 7 p.m., the helicopters crashed. I was home at that time with our brother Sigi and my mother. Dad is going to tell his part. He was here in Tennessee. We watched Beverly Hills 90210. It was about 8:45 p.m. and then his girlfriend of that time called the house. My mother picked the phone and she said, "Ruth, Nir died. There was a crash and Nir died." My mother was like, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Flip on to the news channel." And so we flipped. At first, the anchor said that the helicopters made their way from Lebanon to Israel. And so my mother said, "Well, you should calm down. Everything is fine." Nir was on his way. But then about an hour and a half later, they corrected themselves and said that the helicopters were on their way to the Lebanese border. In that time, we're talking 1997. So there's no WhatsApp, there's no Facebook, there's like virtually no cellular phones in Israel. And so you couldn't really get any information. I remember the house being filled with people, family and friends trying to, Israelis trying to call somebody that will know somebody that might know if Nir is okay. At about 1 a.m., I fell asleep. I was 10 years old. And at that time, the officers came and told my mother that Nir was in the helicopters. And when I woke up, the house just felt differently. You knew something had happened. It was filled with people, mostly sobbing people. And my mother came to me and said that Nir won't come back. At that time,
my side of the story is that I was here in Tennessee. It was February. There was a little bit snow that day. The time was 4 p.m. In Israel, it's 8 hours later, so it was already midnight, and people there knew already about the crash of the helicopters. And I was driving on Murfreesboro Road, making the turn into Stones River Road. And I was listening, as I usually do, to WSAM 650, which is the Grand Ole Opry station. And this was the time that they broadcast the news. And they said that there was an accident in Israel, 2 helicopters crashed, and there are about 70 casualties. And I knew deep in my heart that I lost my son. I suggest that now you will do the movie and we'll take a break.
okay. So Michal. I understand we're having a little trouble with the movie volume-wise technology and Days of Corona. And so we will have the link for the movie in the Jewish Federation page. I'm sorry about that, guys. Mostly the movie shows what we were talking about, which is Nir and his energy and his big smile. And so please go and watch it afterwards.
That's okay. We'll talk a little bit now about the life after Nir's death. I will concentrate in things that we did to remember him. Actually, we did about 30 different projects. Some of them are in Israel, some of them are in the US. I will not bother you to listen to the list of all the 30 projects, but I will mention a few of them. I'll start with Israel. Immediately after Nir's death, we built in his high school an amphitheater that is called the Classroom in Nature. It's kind of a nice monument over and above being used by the kids in the high school. We opened a fund, and every year, 23 years in a row, we send a few artillery officers into the university to get their academic degrees. Once a year, my wife is very busy to put together an event for all the 73 families of the fallen soldiers together. We do it every year in the winter, in February in the north. And we have about 1,000 guests there that are getting together for a day or two. Always we get the president or the prime minister to attend. We built in the north a monument to remember all the 73. This is the most beautiful monument that exists in Israel. And it gets about 500,000 visitors every year. It became a tourist attraction in Israel, that all the tourists that are coming, including all the pilgrims that are coming to Israel, are stopping there in the north to see this beautiful monument. My daughter Tal, that sits here next to me, she volunteered in a school next to the place where Nir died for a year. So when she finished high school at the age of 18, before she went to the military service for 2 years, she did an extra year volunteering in a school there. She wanted to be close to the place where Nir died. And the last item that I want to mention about Israel is that we built a theater in a city by the name Zichron Yaakov. It is called the House of Nir. And this is a very nice place where the people in Zichron are going to see all kind of movies and theater shows. And we are very proud of it. It is operating now 15 years in a row. If I'm moving to the US, probably the most interesting story is the library in Laverne. In 2003, about 17 years ago, we opened this building that you see now on the slide. It's the most beautiful building in the city of Laverne. I remember that when time came to do the event, we are talking about the year 2003, there was a lot of questioning about security and safety, because this was the time that in Israel we had the second Intifada, and there was an uprising in Israel of the Palestinians, and almost on a daily basis there were terrorist attacks and casualties. And here in Laverne, the police was concerned how are they going to handle the safety, because they knew that it's in the newspaper, everybody knows about it. They knew that I'm bringing many guests from Israel, about a busload of friends. They knew that the head of the Israeli military is coming, and they were very concerned, and we had a meeting, and they did not know exactly how to handle it. But thank God that a few hours later, they got a phone call from the Secret Service, and they told them, guys, you go aside, we are taking over. And the Secret Service was leading the little city of Laverne for about 72 hours. So the head of the Israeli military, General Ya'alon, came to the meeting, the spokesman of the military. The president at that time gave them Air Force One. They landed in the Nashville airport and came directly to the ceremony. The governor of Tennessee sent the head of the National Guards, and he sent him with a certificate honoring Nir and the family, and giving us an honored rank in the National Guards of colonels. our congressman, Bart Gordon, asked us if it's okay to raise the American flag on the Capitol in the name of Nir, and we sure said, yeah, go ahead and do it. So on 4th of July, 2003, the big flag over the Congress was raised for the name of Nir. We got a certificate from the architect of the White House certifying that this is the flag that was there for 24 hours. And the certificate, as well as the flag, is displayed in the theater in Zichron Yaakov that I mentioned earlier. It was a very nice event, and we are very proud with the library that is functioning perfectly now for 17 years in a row, and the building is kept like it's brand new every day. Over and above being a developer in Tennessee, I have the luxury that I can name streets. So we took a street and called it 73 Avenue, after the 73 fallen soldiers. Several families from the 73 that know me personally and they are close to me asked me to name streets after their kids. So don't be surprised if you come to Laverne and you see a street by the name Ofner, or by the name Eden, that was the pilot that crashed with Nir, or Mickey Katz, or Alon Babian. All those names are soldiers that died together with Nir. Obviously, we have here a very long boulevard that is called Nir Shreibman Boulevard. It's one of the longest streets in Laverne. And last but not least, fire station number 3 in Laverne, which is also the base for training for police officers and firefighters, is also named after Nir. And now Tal will close the story.
I would just also like to talk a little bit about life after Nir. When something like this happens to you, it's devastating. I mean, you don't know how to wake up in the morning. Being a parent now, for the past 4.5-year-old, I sometimes look at my parents and have no idea how they have the strength to keep on working, to keep on being happy and traveling and cooking and, you know, just basic stuff. They amaze me, and thank you, Dad, for doing this with me. But being his sister was also kind of a question as, how am I gonna live life without my big brother? So I did a lot of things trying to follow his footsteps. I asked to attend the middle school in Israel, which he attended. In the military, I did not serve in Lebanon because we did not serve in that time. But I did do a meaningful service, just like my brother did. As my dad said, I volunteered before the military for a year in the school next to the crash, just to be up north and kind of see what Nir was talking about and what he was protecting and dying protecting. And then I remember after finishing my service that then it really became hard for me. Nir died while in service, being a 20-year-old, and there's a lot of things in life which he won't be able to do. He did not go to college. He did not marry. He did not have kids. And I knew that when I finished my service, I would start doing things that Nir would never had the luxury of doing. And so I do try to take him with me every day into wherever I go and tell a little bit about him and try to be a better person and try to have that charisma and that smile and that just kind of very, very happiness about me, just like Nir was. And I want to thank also Noam for letting us talk about Nir tonight and sharing his story with a lot of people here that know us and don't know us. It's a privilege to commemorate his memory this way as well. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. If you have any questions for Tal and Amnon, I would love to ask them. I have to say that I wrote everything for tonight, and the hardest part was I didn't know how to thank you both. I know it's one of the hardest things to talk about it, and the situation that we are here now, and I appreciate it so much. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, sharing the story of Nir. This year, I didn't experience siren. We didn't experience face-to-face memorial service. And with all the technical difficulties, your stories are memory. And I speak from the entire Jewish Israeli community, from everyone, and saying toda, and you have to. So thank you. Just checking if there is any questions. Thank you for everyone who joined our Yom Hazikaron service. Sorry, I'm excited. For Yom Hazikaron service, I want to invite TELAIT. She is an Israeli songwriter and cellist living in Nashville, sing the song Yeled, Ima, Ve'aba, Mother, Father, and a Child. I want to say a special thank you to Michal and all the Jewish Federation team for helping, for Eric, for the special message, and for TELAIT. Toda rabba, and thank you.
Thank you, Noam, and everybody. בכל פעם ששמש שוקעת וכשמטוס בשמיים עובר, אתה שם בכל עת שומר מלמעלה, שכלום לא יהיה כאן חסר, וכשגשם ראשון מגיע והלילה אפל ומנוכר, אתה שם בכל עת דואג מלמעלה, שרק לא יהיה לנו קר, ובינינו נמצא הים, השמיים ואולי העולם, וגם הם לא יפרידו בינינו, ילדי הקטן. ואפשר לנסות ולחייך, לאהוב וללכת קדימה, בסוף נפגש ושוב להיות ילד ואבא ואמא. לאהוב וללכת קדימה, בסוף נפגש שוב להיות ילד ואבא ואמא, בסוף נפגש ונשוב להיות ילד ואבא
Ava.